Welcome everybody. Give it a minute while everybody gets logged in here. I'd like to welcome everybody to the April edition of On Track Live. Appreciate you chiming in. Just a reminder that these webinars are also recorded. We've got more and more people now who are chiming in later, using it more like a podcast to catch up on their own schedules. And I know that several of our regulars are right now engaged in the same meeting that Max and I just walked out of. So they'll catch up with us on the recording as well. Before I get to introducing Max, we'll do what we always do and just give a quick rundown of newsy updates and a little shameless self-promotion. On the news update side, of course, the rail and coal issue that's taken all the air out of the room for the last few weeks has been the huge tragic accident in Baltimore that took down the Francis Scott Key Bridge. That, of course, has shut down the Baltimore coal export facility, which is the second largest in the country, and has caused some real issues for our coal exporters. I would say that the mood is cautiously optimistic. The Corps of Engineers is making great progress on clearing the wreckage and reopening navigation channels. They're saying that they'll have a smaller navigation channel open possibly by the end of April, and they're aiming to reopen the larger 50-foot deep navigation channel that the coal ships use by the end of May. As I mentioned before, Max and I were just over at a meeting of the Rail Energy Transportation Advisory Committee at the Surface Transportation Board, and the Arch Coal CEO, who exports a lot of coal through that facility, reported to that group that the railroads have been very cooperative with the coal shippers and doing everything they can. There are some volumes of coal that are able to be rerouted down through Hampton Roads in Virginia, and even a little bit of coal being able to move onto the river system out through the Gulf. So they're rerouting as much as they can. But Paul Lang indicated that if things get straightened out, if the Corps is successful in getting the navigation channel reopened by the end of April, or excuse me, by the end of May, that the situation should be able to sort itself out by the end of the year. EIA is projecting Energy Information Administration cut their coal export forecast for the year by 6% because of the impact of this event. But Mr. Lang seemed to feel like they could make up some lost ground and do some catch up. As long as it does get done by the end of May, he feels like things will be straightened out by the end of the year. If it goes much past May, that's when it becomes more difficult. That's when the river system is going to become unavailable as a safety valve because of its importance to our guests industry today, the grain and feed folks. If we once we get into the harvest season, most of the commodity that moves through those channels is the harvest. So everybody cross your fingers. Hope the Corps of Engineers is successful in getting that reopened as quickly as they can. As we mentioned, there is a Rail Energy Transport Advisory Committee meeting today in Washington. That's why we're wearing our Sunday best instead of my PJs that you usually see me sitting here in. That meeting is still going on. We've had Emily Regas, the president of NCTA, gave the joint shippers report this morning. As we speak, Betty Whalen from the Western Coal Traffic League and also an NCTA member will be giving the utility update. The NCTA on-time performance survey is a central point of that utility update that's given to RETAC every time. So that's coming out today. And we'll have a story and a link to both of those reports in tomorrow's On Track newsletter. So if you want to read up on what's happening here in our nation's capital, it'll show up in your inbox at some point tomorrow. The other big news, this is probably the last meeting that Marty Oberman, the chair, the very vocal chair of the Surface Transportation Board, will be at with us. He's retiring pretty soon. No word on who's going to replace him as chair at this point. There's been some speculation as to a whole cast of characters that might be nominated for the seat that Marty is vacating, but the reality is, in an election year, we're likely looking at a 2 Republican, 2 Democrat board for some time, at least until after the election and things get sorted out over which regime is going to be in charge next year. On the upside, Patrick Fuchs, one of the Surface Transportation Board members who was recently nominated for a second term, did actually get his confirmation hearing last week. So it looks like that's going to go through, and we should have at least the 4-member board moving forward as we move forward from here. So that's probably enough. We're going to, in our discussion here that commences in a second, we're going to come back and touch on a couple of those concepts. Watch for the On Track tomorrow for some links to the reports that went down in RETAC, and then we will also have the NCTA on-time performance survey as a topic at our upcoming spring meeting in Chattanooga, which is an excellent segue to a little bit of shameless self-promotion. We're about a month out from our operations and maintenance and spring conferences. This is our second year of running those conferences back to back. So we have an overlap day there in the middle with some plenary speakers and an opportunity for everybody to socialize and golf together in the middle of the meeting there. Beautiful facility, amazingly beautiful golf course up on Stone Mountain. So if you're golf, you don't want to meet that. The April 27 is a key date. Okay, close of business Eastern Standard Time on April 27th. The early bird registration rates will go away, and our special screaming good deal with the Chattanooga Hotel goes away. So if you have delayed registering, please do so as soon as possible. Again, the discount rates for both the hotel and the conference will be going away April 27th. We've got a great lineup of speakers there. The O&M conference registration is especially strong this year. And so it's looking like we're going to have a really good turnout in Chattanooga in May 21st to 23rd. Melinda's making faces. It's that week, May 21st to 24th. So hope to see everybody in Chattanooga. So with that, let's move on to a little conversation here. Remind everybody that this is a conversation. If anybody wants to unmute or do the little raising handy thingy to ask a question, please feel free to do it. I've also got the chat box open here. If you have questions, you can put them into the chat box, and we'll divert the discussion to address your questions. My guest today, and I appreciate him stepping in kind of short order, is Max Fisher. Max is the chief economist and treasurer over at the National Grain and Feed Association, which is a very well-run shipper organization representing American agricultural interests, and goes to RETAC because there's a lot of agricultural now that ends up in ethanol and biofuels and other energy products. So we try to work as closely as we can with NGFA, and there's a really important issue coming out now that NGFA has kind of been out in front on. And this relates to the state of California, being California, and asking the federal EPA to let them do things with environmental rules that nobody else does. This is how we got started with low emission vehicles. When cars sold in California could be held to tougher standards. Well, they're starting to bleed over into our rail world now. NGFA, Max's organization, was an early mover in creating some opposition for this. There's a key deadline coming up on Monday when comments are due at the Environmental Protection Agency on this issue. National Coal Transportation Association will be filing comments on Monday in cooperation with several other shipper groups that we often cooperate with. opposing this deal, but Max agreed to step in here for a very timely topic and help educate us on this, because it's not just a California issue. It's got national implications. So Max, maybe I could trouble you to tell everybody kind of what the issue is.
Sure. Yeah, I'd be happy to, John. And thanks for having me. So the California Air Resources Board, which has jurisdiction over air quality in California, put out this rule. So it's in place. But before they can actually begin enforcement, they have to get permission from EPA, due to Interstate Commerce and Clean Air Act and so forth. So that's what you all are commenting on, what we've commented on. And essentially what this rule, in case for those of you who don't know, it would by 2030 for passenger rail trains, and then also for like switching and industrial trains. So like if you have a locomotive that you use to switch around your facility, it would be, subject to this ruling by 2030. And what this does is it makes it to where you have to decommission any locomotive that's 23 years old or older by 2030. And then also by 2035, then it makes it to where for line haul moves, for the railroads, essentially, where they have to decommission theirs too. They're 23 years old. And then, of course, if you decommission these locomotives, you have to replace them, one would think. And you would have to replace it with a locomotive that has zero emissions. So in other words, probably a battery operated, one would think, unless another technology were to come out. Battery operated locomotives are not commercially viable yet. Maybe they'll never be. They have very limited range, and typically in the real world, you got to have quite a bit of range. They're also heavy, so it takes away from the efficiency. So as of right now, essentially California is putting out a rule that cannot be complied with. So we have this issue. Our group, y'all, we're all trying to raise awareness outside of California that, hey, California's doing this. The rest of the country may want to take note and do something about it. So that's what we're doing with EPA right now. American Association of Railroads, they have a lawsuit, Eastern District Court of California, where they're essentially saying you don't have jurisdiction to do this. This is impacting the whole rail network. The economics of it are going to be impacted. That is a Surface Transportation Board issue, not EPA in California. So this is, let's just say EPA rubber stamps it, worst case scenario, let's say they do. Then it becomes a legal issue, for the court system, or potentially even if we get a new administration, after this next election, then maybe that next EPA will have second thoughts and will pull this back with permission that they're going to give. So anyway, so just so like what ag has done anyway, strength in numbers, right? And we're an association that represents ag businesses, mostly grain companies and feed companies. So us, along with the producer groups, think of National Corn Growers, American Farm Bureau, groups like that. We submitted joint comments to EPA. It sounded like, John, you guys are also doing like a group comment submission. It sounds like, well, we did one too. And, we went with these national groups, and then we also gave other states, the ability to chime in and join the letter, the comments. And a lot of them did, because they can see that this is not just a California issue, as you mentioned, John. This goes beyond California. And, something else I forgot to mention, this not only is going to make them decommission these locomotives, but it's also going to make it to where UP and BN, will have to pay in, I think it's like $800 million per year, some crazy amount of money, to pay for this. And anyway, so this is a mandate, one of those we like to call an unfunded mandate, from on high, and it's going to be very expensive for industry, ultimately passed on to you all, along with other shippers. And anyway, we feel like it's, you do too. It sounds like very, very bad regulation. And
unfunded mandate. that fee that they're going to make the railroads pay. Of course, railroads don't pay fees; they pass them on to their customers, which is all of us. And a mandate for a technology that doesn't exist. This is
Mhm.
the classic energy transition model here. We'll say what we're going to do and then somehow will the technology into existence. Uh, Max, isn't there also, and this is more I think some of the points that the railroads are going to really focus on, as the railroads pursue their litigation claiming preemption. This is what the railroads always go through is, they're not subject to these state laws because they're an interstate,
Mhm.
a critical interstate, utility almost that you can't allow a patchwork of regulations out there. They'll make that case, but when it gets to that litigation, then um, you know there's a question as to whether the courts will or will not stay the implementation of California's rules while they let that litigation that's going to take years to sort out play out. I mean, has there been any discussion on your guys' end as to whether they feel like that's a risk that this actually could go in effect in one place or
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you know how it is. Like for right now, we're focused on what we can do, which is comment to EPA. There are those who are skeptical, that EPA will pull it back. There are some who think that there is a potential that this is a way of essentially implementing a rule without having to go through the rulemaking process um, for the nationwide on zero emission locomotives. I hope that's not the case. We're hoping like the USDA will, Department of Agriculture, that is, will talk about supply chain impact, food price impact, energy price impact. But yeah, in the event that this goes through, yeah, that's I guess our hope is to through the court system with a stay in the
and
near term anyway.
yeah, and the other, I've had transportation lawyers and environmental lawyers explain to me that is the other risk that if EPA grants this, what CARB, what the state of California is asking EPA for is a waiver.
Mhm.
Uh, and if California or if EPA grants that waiver to California, that sets a precedent. So, which other states of similar political leanings to California may be next
Sure.
to step in and request their own waiver, and what basis would EPA have to deny them if they're already doing it? But,
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely. It could spread. Even if other states wouldn't do that, which I suspect some will. Um, you know, these locomotives, they go from California out to probably as far west as Chicago, just on BP and UP and BN, and then some of their locomotives even go farther east, right? They're taken by other railroads. They sometimes share locomotives, and anyway, so yeah, this is going to be far reaching for sure. So um, I it's not at all isolated to California. So
yeah. Well, I think Max and I are going to chat about some other stuff that's going on over the STB. So if anybody's got any questions about this CARB rule or anything, this might be a good time to put something in the chat or raise your hand if you'd like to. It's let me just open it this way. I mean, what other issues are really high on the agriculture folks list in terms of let me start the conversation this way. Are the ag shippers seeing improvements in rail service, and if so, how much? I mean, kind of how is that going for you guys?
yeah, yeah, definitely. Compared to a couple of years ago, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So but this year I know out west there was some unfavorable weather, right? You had probably more of that severe cold weather, occurred in the western half, and then also, you had a lot of rain, mudslides, wildfires, and yeah, we've heard of some issues, as a result of probably of some of those factors, as far as service. But so that's the immediate stuff. But in the long run, um, we're just kind of worried about this shareholder fight going on with Norfolk Southern.
Mhm.
You clearly have some Wall Street interests who want to go back to more of that, operating ratio type mentality, and well, that's scary stuff. So we're
Yeah.
uh, we're just hoping that, the railroads can stay the course with, they've shifted more. It's arguable as to how much of a shift there's been, but probably more so, one would think, towards, wanting to gain more long-term business, making the investments, doing what's needed to keep the assets in place, to make that happen. And to hear Wall Street kind of rumbling saying that no, what's maybe good for service is not good for them in the short run is anyway, that's a little concerning.
Yeah, that was another real topic of conversation. And right at the kickoff of the RETAC meeting this morning, we had three of the five board members all made statements referring to the proxy fight going on over at Norfolk Southern. Many of them have also expressed in op-eds and meeting appearances lately their concern over this. The situation, for those of you who may not, be on NS or not following it closely, obviously NS is under some financial stress, leading back to last February's derailment and fiery derailment in East Palestine, Ohio, and they're paying out big bucks for the cleanup and being sued by everybody about that. So the organization obviously is in a state of stress. And an activist investor named Ancora Holdings stepped in and started waging a proxy fight. Essentially wanted to take over the railroad. Proposed their own slate of directors. Have also proposed their own management team, including Jamie Boychuk, who used to run CN, I believe. And so, that shareholder vote is coming up in the middle of May. And boy, it is getting hot. We'll have, again, in tomorrow's On Track, we've got a few articles you can read to kind of catch up on the situation. But the investor group that's trying to take over NS has not been shy about saying, their objectives are actually their CEO candidate last week in an interview used the words, we've got to strip this railroad down to the studs and rebuild it. And so, they're talking about going back to that, cult of operating. We kind of quit saying precision scheduled railroading because there's so many flavors of it, and there's, it's kind of become a cliche, but this cult of operating ratio where, we don't really care about growth. We don't really care about resiliency in the network. We just want to make these numbers. It's pretty clear that that's what these folks who are trying to take over NS are doing. You've obviously got a lot of members shipping on NS, don't you, Max? Or
We do. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, as far as ag products, BNSF would be the largest one, based on their draw area. But yeah, all of them have, there's ag all over the country. So yeah, and it has quite a bit too.
Have you had members expressing concern over the situation at NS? And I know we have some coal shippers who are in the East, particularly exporters, who are worried about what's going on there.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. After what happened a couple of years ago, it's, yeah, there's a lot of ag shippers are not wanting to relive, what happened then. And, not, that's the thing. Like, we're all for making money. I'm sure y'all are too. And so not at all trying to like say, hey, they shouldn't make money, but we're also realizing that, if railroads are run for the long run growth and not just the short run, that tends to be in the best interest of shippers too, the long run. Therefore, like they're trying to earn business over time by being reliable. And so that's the concern, I guess, is that this is, perhaps a short-term play that will, potentially end up negatively impacting shippers. So yeah, we're watching it. Of course, we'll work with NS no matter what happens. But it is, some of the things have been stated in the news media are, it's just, it makes you take a step back and kind of think, what is this? What is it going to mean for shippers?
Right. Our shippers, particularly coal shippers, but some of the other folks that come out to our meetings, cement manufacturers, lime manufacturers, fly ash shippers. Our membership really, we are the ultimate captive shippers, right? You don't, we just don't have any options in almost every case for shipping the volumes of coal that would need to be shipped. How does that break out for the grain and feed folks? I mean, are you all, captive to the rails, or do you have options to shift a truck if you have to?
It just depends on where the customers are at. I get, you guys are probably sending it to like utilities, which are in certain places, and probably the same ones being fed over, and ag probably does have more options than that. In most cases, in some cases, you don't. Like if you're serving the export market, you got to get it to the water, right? And or if unless it's Mexico or Canada, but so yeah, I mean there sometimes are options to where you can go truck, especially if it's a shorter haul to customers. But sometimes, you're trying to get it to a feeder out in California and it's from the Midwest, and yeah, you can't truck it from the Midwest to California, or you can't truck it to the PNW to export it. It's there are certain situations where it's going to go by rail or it's not going to go at all.
Good example would be back during the great service crisis of 21, 22. We need to come up with a name for that. Would be, I mean, it was ag shippers that obtained those emergency service orders to keep chickens from starving on the West Coast. Wasn't that right?
It was, yeah. There was a poultry producer in the West that yeah, they were on the verge of needing to depopulate, I guess is the nice term, that that was going to happen. And yeah, if not for the emergency service order, it might have come to that.
That's amazing. What did NGFA get involved in some of that? What are your priorities in terms of the Surface Transportation Board? I mean, STB has a bunch of rulemakings out there. I mean, which ones are most important to you guys?
Yeah, I mean, we were part of, we put in comments, on the emergency service rule that recently came out, I guess 2 or 3 months ago. This reciprocal switching one that everyone believes is going to be coming out very soon. We're very interested in that. In part how we just talked about, sometimes ag has some options as to which market it goes and serves, and being able to have access to another railroad would open up more markets for certain shippers. So very interested in that rule. It's definitely a step in the right direction. We hope, based on the proposed rule that came out last year, a step in the right direction, I'll say. We don't know what the final rule is going to say yet, but we do hope that STB will continue whatever they come out with, that they'll build on that. This is one of those rulemakings where we think it's step in the right direction, but there are more steps to take. So that's kind of where we're at. Like the way STB proposed the rule was that it's going to be based on if you have really bad service, you then can petition for a switch. And we would like it to be where you don't have to just have bad service. You can just petition for a switch no matter what, in order to open up more competition in the rail space.
And that's how the rule was originally proposed, right? It was originally based on creating the goal was creating access, and somehow it morphed into, I've heard various speculation as to how we went from let's just create service, let's just create access standards for shippers to a service thing. Well, was it because we just came out of this big service crisis, so service is what's on everybody's mind? Or was it, the personality of the chairman who was looking for a rule that he could put out with a unanimous vote? Who knows the background on it? But I think that amongst the shipper groups, there was, quite a bit of, concern about that shift. I mean, reciprocal switching is not as important to coal shippers because we're not, it's based on how close you are to an exchange point. Mm-hmm. And, we're typically long haul, it's not a rule that works for us, but, we like to see reform happen there. Anything that creates more choice and more accountability for the railroads to do customer service as opposed to just achieve operating ratio. So we did also put in comments saying, hey, you know, this should be for everybody, not just for somebody who's been getting bad service. And coincidentally, tying it to service for some period. If your service wasn't good in that period, but that's now the benchmark, you know, that's sort of a descending, you know, it's not going to get any better. It can only get worse from there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So we're mildly, I mean, we're optimistic, I guess, about this rule and what it's hopefully going to start in this space. So um, anyway, we shall find out fairly soon. We'd heard rumor that it'd be in the month of April. Anyway, so I think it's going to be coming really soon, and look forward to whatever STB puts in there. We know it can't hurt shippers. Anyway, that's the way we're looking at it. It can only help.
Good. Just remind everybody, if you got any questions on any of the topics that we talked about today, or this is your chance to learn about a industry that's a little different. Go ahead and speak up. We really appreciate Max coming on with us today. We do spend a lot of time trying to talk to other shipper organizations who ship everything. It's good for folks to stick together. So there's a high amount of coordination that happens between these different groups that represent different commodities and different sectors of the economy, and we really appreciate how open folks like Max are when we knock on the door and ask for help or information sharing or that sort of thing. Anything else that you'd like to share today, Max, or anything on your
I just think it's a great partnership, between our organization and yours. And anyway, I appreciate and I give you the credit for it. You're the one who reached out and started that, a few years ago, at least with me anyway. You may have been doing it with predecessors before me at NGFA, but anyway, no, great show. Thank you for letting me be part of it, John.
No, thank you for being here, Max, and appreciate everybody. Again, watch your On Track tomorrow for reports on what's going on RETAC. As far as our comments won't be going in until the deadline next Monday, so probably the next edition of On Track after that, you'll be able to see how we're commenting on this CARB rulemaking. But appreciate Max jumping in here at the last minute. It's a bad news for any kind of shipper you can think of, kind of thing. So it's good to get people aware of what's going on out there and spread the word. We will not be doing an On Track Live next month during May because there's no point. You're all going to buy airline tickets and register for the conference in Chattanooga, and we'll see everybody in person there. We'll come back for On Track Live in June. Our guest then will be Curtis Wilkerson, who's a very bright political guy here in Washington, and we'll be able to talk some politics, election year stuff in June. And then in July, we're going to have, we've been having to kind of reschedule this guy several times, but I think July will work. I've got Dave Carnegie, who's the CEO of the Society for Mining, Metallurgy, and Exploration. Great organization based out of Denver, and SME's doing a whole lot of work around workforce development, which is something that's facing mines, utilities, well, really anybody. This big industrial these days, where are we going to find people to do the work and replace all of us old people who are retiring way too fast? So good speakers lined up going into summer. Don't forget to register for Chattanooga. Melinda, do you have anything else you want to toss into the thing? She's making the nope, we're good sign. So appreciate everybody joining us today. Again, this will be recorded for your colleagues or anybody else who'd like to share the word. Keep an eye on the On Track or get a hold of Melinda. And thanks again, everybody, for joining us today. We'll see you in Chattanooga.